Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
I'd really appreciate your comment. It helps me understand if you enjoyed the story and how I can improve in future ones. I got the line on a quiet Sunday morning, the kind that makes you think your life is steadier than it actually is. She was barefoot at the sink, stirring coffee like she had all the time in the world, and she smirked over the mug and said she should test my patience, just to see how much I can take. My name is Daniel Keaton, 35, mechanical engineer out of Denver. I design things that don't fail under pressure. That's the job. In a decent marriage, that skill set felt transferable. Anticipate stress, build margin, catch cracks before they spread. 9 years in, I still believed our system could carry load. So I laughed, kissed her cheek, and told her she wouldn't get very far with that experiment. I meant it as a joke. I think she did too. At least, that's how it sounded in the kitchen with the first coffee of the day and the sun coming through the blinds like everything in our house was simple and honest. The first odd beat landed an hour later. I was heading to meet my brother for a late breakfast, patting the usual places for my keys. Bowl by the door, work bag, jacket pocket. Nothing. I'm a creature of habit. I put things where they belong because I like the feeling of walking out without a scavenger hunt. I asked if she'd seen them. She turned, wide-eyed innocent, then bit her lip like she was holding back a joke. Did you check the freezer? Who says that? I opened the freezer on reflex, and there they were, resting on a bag of frozen peas like they'd grown there. She laughed. I was 20 minutes late to my brother, and he texted a thinking face emoji I didn't know how to answer. I blamed traffic and ordered black coffee like I could swallow the irritation with heat. Back home, there was another tiny detour. My noise-canceling headphones were missing from my desk. I found them later in the laundry basket, tucked under a sweater she never wears. I could hear her in the next room, humming along to something on her phone, still riding that playful energy. I told myself it was harmless. Couples tease. People get bored. Maybe we were due for a shakeup after a month of quiet routines and careful calendars. That's what I thought until she canceled the dinner we'd booked 2 weeks out. The one at the small Italian place that only takes reservations if you know the owner. She stood in the doorway and shrugged like it wasn't a big deal. Not feeling Italian, she said. Let's just DoorDash. I had to call a guy who'd done me a favor and tell him we weren't coming. He kept his voice polite, but I heard the annoyance he tried to bury. I apologized more than necessary because the story didn't make sense even to me. In the evening, she came downstairs wearing the white blouse with the faint Merlot arc near the hip, the stain from a clumsy toast 2 months ago. It had been in the to-fix pile, a running joke about how grown adults still need stain remover and a second try. She knew I felt bad about it. She put it on anyway and spun like a ballerina, asking if I could see the mark. I could. She laughed again. Guess someone never washed it. Then she left it draped over the back of a chair where I'd have to look at it whenever I walked through the living room. The petty part of my brain told me to toss it in the hamper and rewash it twice. I let it hang there like a tiny white flag nobody had the courage to wave. It wasn't a fight. No raised voices or slammed doors. Just a series of small choices that shared a theme. If you weren't looking, you'd call it noise. I was looking. Engineers are suspicious of coincidence, especially when the timing lines up too neatly. Morning key delay, afternoon plan cancellation, evening clothing choice with a built-in jab. 3 points draw a line. I stood at the sink rinsing a plate that wasn't dirty and cataloged the day like a job report. Observed unplanned outage at 9:10, recovery time 20 minutes, secondary diversion at 15:30, morale impact moderate, tertiary signal at 19:40, message received. Before bed, I was halfway through a Denver Nuggets replay when she came over and dropped onto the couch with deliberate heaviness. She watched me watch the screen, then asked if I was mad. The truth would have sounded petty if I said it out loud. Mad about what? Frozen keys? A canceled reservation? A shirt I ruined and she chose to showcase? None of it was worth a fight, and all of it together wasn't nothing. I said I was fine. She put her head on my shoulder and asked if I loved her patience. I said yes. I didn't add for now. I slept light. I woke to the sound of her phone buzzing at 6:18 a.m. She turned it face down and said it was nothing. When I got into the shower, the hot water took a full minute to show up. Someone had run the sink long enough to dump the preheated loop. I'm the guy who installed that recirculating pump and knows exactly how long it takes to go cold. I noted the number and filed it away because this is how I measure the world. Count, confirm, decide. It saved me from mistakes more times than I can remember. On the drive to work, the city looked normal, the brown winter grass, the mountain line in the distance, the pickup in front of me with the bumper half hanging on by duct tape. But I felt like a passenger in my own day. I ran through projects in my head, then reran the kitchen scene and the freezer and the blouse. I told myself it would pass. People test, then settle. The difference between a nudge and a shove is intention. At the office, I opened the CAD file I'd left mid-iteration on Friday and found the window moved to a bizarre position. For a second I thought I'd made a mistake, then realized it was just the view setting. Someone had bumped my mouse before I'd left and saved the change. It was probably me. I still felt my jaw clench like the world was nudging me with an elbow in the ribs. I took a long breath, reset my workspace, and wrote a sticky note for myself. Audit assumptions. Around lunch, I texted my brother an apology for the tardiness and told him I'd pick up the tab next time. He sent back, "You good?" I typed, "Yeah, just off rhythm," and stared at the bubble before I hit send. Off rhythm is what you say when you refuse to call a problem because labeling it forces action. I wasn't ready for action. I ate my sandwich at my desk and watched a time-lapse video of someone assembling a watch movement. 100 tiny parts cooperating without complaint. It was soothing and annoying for the same reason. When I got home that evening, the blouse was still on the chair. The coffee mug I washed in the morning had been moved to the wrong cabinet. The top shelf we almost never use because she's short and hates it. The light in the hallway was on. The thermostat was 1 degree lower than we normally keep it. None of this matters to happy people, and all of it matters to people who are being dared to react. I moved the mug, turned off the light, bumped the thermostat, and left the blouse. She came out of the bedroom and asked if I wanted to order Thai. We ate in front of the TV and didn't talk about keys or reservations or stained fabric. She asked about a coworker I barely mentioned. I answered with exactly the number of words required. I watched her clock that changed like a scientist measuring a heartbeat. When she went upstairs, I sat alone for a long time and looked around the living room like it belonged to someone else. Books in the same places, plant that needs water every third day, the dent in the cushion where I always sit to untie my shoes. I wasn't angry, which is its own kind of warning. I opened a notes app and wrote 3 bullet points with dates and times. I slept worse the second night. She drifted to sleep fast, one arm over her face, leaving me on my side of the bed with the hollow quiet that arrives right after a joke lands wrong. I listened to the furnace kick on and off and counted cycles until I stopped hearing the sound and started hearing the message. Something was off, but the kind of off that turns into a direction if you let it. I stared at the ceiling and promised myself I wouldn't overreact. I also promised I wouldn't pretend the freezer grows keys. Both can be true. Both were, for exactly one more day. Day 2 started with the coffee maker blinking 12 o'clock, like it had amnesia. I set that clock once, years ago, and it held time through 2 power outages and a kitchen remodel. Now it flashed dumbly, the brew cycle half run, the pot warm but full of brown water that tasted like it lost an argument with the filter. Next to it sat my travel mug, lid twisted on cross-threaded so it would leak if I grabbed it in a hurry. I unscrewed, reseated, wiped the ring with a paper towel, and let the machine finish sputtering. I told myself it was nothing. Appliances hiccup, threads misalign. Then I opened the dishwasher to put my mug inside and found a handful of forks scattered loose on the bottom rack, tangling the spray arm so it couldn't spin. That doesn't happen by accident. You have to set it wrong and walk away. She came in while I was kneeling, reaching under the arm to free a fork tine. "Did you forget how to use that thing?" she asked, all airy interest, like I was a contestant on a cooking show failing the basics. I said nothing. I lifted the arm, clicked it twice, watched it spin clear, closed the door, and started the cycle. She poured cereal into a mixing bowl instead of a regular one and ate it standing up, scrolling her phone. Milk dripped off the rim. She didn't wipe it. When I left for work, my project binder wasn't where I'd left it the night before. I keep it on the dining table when I'm mid-design, tabbed, dated, with red notes that tell me where to pick up the thread. The table was bare. She'd posted a photo to her stories with a caption about decluttering for peace. Our dining room staged like a magazine spread. Runner straight, centerpiece aligned to the grain, no evidence that real people live here. I found the binder on the bottom shelf of the bookcase, under a stack of cookbooks we never use, the tabs bent at angles that made my eye tick. I put it in my bag and left without comment. Engineers do two things well. We fix and we log. I was doing both. At lunch, my phone buzzed with calendar notifications I didn't create. Reminder, return library books, stretch, breathe. The one blocked at 5:30 p.m. Read quality time. She'd sent the invite from our shared calendar and marked it mandatory. I stared at the word until the letters went flat. I texted back, I'm available after 6. 3 dots appeared, then nothing. When the workday ended, I stopped by the mechanic to pick up my car after a routine service. She'd offered to drop me there in the morning and promised to swing by after work. At 6:10, she still wasn't there. At 6:25, she texted, lost track of time. Uber? The driver found me in 10 minutes. When I got home, she was on the couch, legs tucked under a throw blanket, watching a show we'd agreed to watch together. She paused it, but not fast enough. The spoiler hovered on the screen like a thumbprint. I asked the question I'd been holding. Is there something going on here? My voice was even. I kept my hands in my pockets so they wouldn't try to do the talking. She smiled without her eyes. Just testing your patience, remember? You're still passing so far. She said it sing-song, like a teacher grading worksheets. I nodded once. Copy. That was all. The evening turned into a series of little tug-of-wars I refused to join. She left a stack of dishes by the sink and drifted away. I rinsed them, loaded the washer properly, spun the arm to hear the clear click. She took my charging cable from the nightstand and moved it to the living room. I plugged the spare into the wall and didn't ask for the first. She switched off the hallway light as I was walking toward it. I kept walking and flipped it back on. Every small act said the same thing. I push, you bend. The trick is, bending isn't the same as breaking, and quiet isn't surrender. Sometimes quiet is just a man choosing where not to spend his voice. Around 8, she announced she'd invited her friend to stop by, just for a minute. The minute turned into an hour of wine and laughter in the kitchen while I sat at the dining table, trying to finish a drawing revision with their conversation rolling in like surf. Nothing direct, all implication. Lines about men who need constant hand-holding. A story about a boyfriend who used to freak out if she moved his stuff an inch. Both of them looked at me when they said it, and then looked away, giggling. I made 2 corrections, saved the file, shut the laptop, and excused myself. In the bedroom, I folded laundry that wasn't mine because it was there, and because order calms me more than confrontation. She came in later with that loose, post-wine lightness and draped herself across the bed perpendicular to me, taking up the full width like a cat claiming sunlight. You're very serious tonight, she said. I said I had an early morning. She rolled onto her back and asked if I was mad. I told her no. Anger gives too much away. Information is better than emotion. She asked if I was going to sleep on the couch began, as if this new thing were a habit I'd formed. If you need the bed, I said, take it. I grabbed a pillow and went downstairs. The couch isn't comfortable, but it's honest. It doesn't pretend to be something it's not. I lay there under the throw blanket that never quite covers my feet and listen to the house talk. Ducts ticking, the refrigerator humming, the clock over the mantel clicking toward the next hour. I thought about what she said and realized the frame she'd built. A test with no answer key, no end date, and no stated metrics, where my grade was determined by how much I would absorb without complaint. You don't negotiate with that. You define it, then you decide if you live with it. Sometime after midnight, my phone buzzed, calendar update, now with a heart emoji next to quality time. That was supposed to be funny, or sweet, or something in the neighborhood of both. It landed like a dare. I let the notification sit. The screen dimmed, went black, and gave me back the ceiling's shallow glow. Morning came with a misplaced wallet. I found it finally in the coat closet, inside an empty shoebox, a theater prop waiting for the cue it never got. I made oatmeal, ate it standing up where she'd stood the day before, and left the bowl in the sink, not out of spite, but to test my own hypothesis. If I create minor disorder, does she care about the mess or just about the leverage? When I got home that evening, the bowl was still there, now with a cherry tomato floating in cloudy water, like she'd started to soak it and changed her mind. On the fridge, a sticky note. Remember to breathe. I took it down and put it in the drawer with the takeout menus. When the Nuggets game came on, she sat next to me with her knee bumping mine in a rhythm that didn't match the game's pace. She muted the volume, then unmuted it a notch lower, then a notch lower again, as if volume were an argument you can win by attrition. I took the remote, set it where I wanted it, and put the remote back on the armrest. She looked at me like I'd broken the script. I guess I had. At some point, you stop asking if this is a phase and start measuring whether it's a pattern. It was the kind that creeps in the way water does, capillary action through a hairline crack, slow until it isn't. I asked one question. I got an answer dressed as a joke. I believed the answer, not the costume. By the time I went to bed, couch again, I felt the shape of a line hardening under my feet. I was on the edge of a decision. My silence was control. Tomorrow, I'd stop taking notes and start setting terms. Day 3 didn't arrive with fireworks. It landed like a stack of neatly printed pages, numbered, stapled, and impossible to ignore. I woke before my alarm, sat on the edge of the couch, and realized I'd hit the end of the observation phase. Engineers love data, but there comes a point when more data just confirms what you already know. At 7:12 a.m., I made coffee, set 2 mugs on the counter, and waited. She walked in wearing my hoodie, hair up, scrolling her phone. "You're up early," she said, like we hadn't spent 2 nights as careful roommates. I slid a mug toward her. She took it, sipped, and made the face she makes when it's not sweet enough. I didn't move to fix it. Instead, I put my palms on the counter like a podium and said, "We need 5 minutes. Then you can have your morning." She looked wary, then bored, then amused, all in 1 second. "5 minutes for what?" "Terms," I said. "Clear ones." That got a laugh. "Terms? Are we negotiating a hostage release?" "No," I said. "I'm clarifying mine." I stated a single, measurable thing. "You have 72 hours, I said. By 7:30 a.m. on Thursday. She tilted her head like she was trying to hear a faint sound in another room. 72 hours for a full return to an actual marriage, I said. No games. No tests. Respect restored. Basic trust, basic courtesy. If that doesn't happen by then, we separate. Not a threat. A plan. She blinked, then smiled the way people do when a magician shows them the setup before the trick. "You're actually giving me a deadline?" "Yes." "That's cute." "Not cute," I said. "Clarity." She leaned on the island, hoodie sleeves pulled over her hands like a teenager. "And what does full return even mean to you, Daniel? You want me to grovel? To admit I'm evil for moving your keys?" "It means you stop treating me like a lab rat," I said. "It means you undo what you can undo and acknowledge what you can't. It means we sit down, today, not next month, and decide if we're getting counseling or calling a lawyer. It means you say out loud whether you want to be married to me, not to a man you can poke until he barks." She laughed again, lighter, then shook her head. "You're so dramatic." I checked the oven clock. 7:18 a.m. "You have until Thursday at 7:30, I repeated. "If nothing changes, I'll send you a written plan for separation. I'm not asking twice, and I'm not debating." "So if I don't pass your little test, you'll what? Move to the couch forever?" She shrugged. "Relax. You're still passing." "This isn't pass/fail, I said. "It's choose/lose. That wiped the smirk for half a heartbeat, then it snapped back. "Fine. Can we not do this before I've had breakfast?" "We're already doing it," I said, and walked away. I took my coffee to the dining table, opened my laptop, and typed the same terms into an email, time-stamped, subject line plain. 72 hours/next steps. Then I sent a calendar invite to both of us for Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Title, Decision. Description, A. Full return. B. Complete separation. Just the fork in the road written down. At work, focus came easy. Ultimatums simplify things. I knocked out a markup that had nagged me all week, then made 2 calls. One to a couples therapist whose name had been sitting in my notes for 6 months, and one to a family lawyer my buddy recommended after his divorce last year. I didn't book the therapist yet. I did book the lawyer for a consultation on Friday. I'm not superstitious, but I respect timelines. Thursday was hers. Friday could be mine. At lunch, I drove to a branch of our bank and asked the manager to add a dual authorization note to the joint savings withdrawals above a certain threshold. Not a freeze, just a seatbelt. I also moved a chunk of my pay from the joint checking to my individual account, where it used to live before we combined everything. When a structure shows stress, you don't wait for a beam to crack before you bring in shoring. Back at the office, I scanned essential documents into a private folder: passport, title, insurance. Then I went home early and did something that felt both petty and exactly right. I cleared half the closet. Not all of it. Just enough to signal I was serious. My suit jacket slid to one side. My shirts spaced evenly like soldiers. In the nightstand, I took my charging cables, my watch, the few small things you can never find when you need them. I didn't hide them. I just made them mine again. She came home to the sight of hangers with a little extra air in them and raised her eyebrows high. Wow, big moves. Small ones, I said. Big ones happened Thursday. She flopped onto the bed and kicked off her shoes. You're really going to pretend this is normal? Putting a timer on your wife? I'm not timing you, I said. I'm timing me. I'm telling you how long I'll live under conditions that don't work. She rolled onto her stomach and looked at me upside down. And if I apologize? If I wash the blouse and make a reservation and put your keys on a velvet pillow, do I get the gold star? You get a marriage, I said. And I get one too. She snorted. You're not fun when you're trying to be profound. I'm not trying, I said. I'm done. She was quiet for a full 10 seconds, long enough to hear the neighbor's garage door open. Then she reached for her phone. I'm going to yoga, she said. We'll talk later when you're less whatever this is. Later is fine, I said. Clock's still running. After she left, I printed the email I'd sent and put it on the fridge with a magnet from our trip to Taos. Not to dramatize, to make the invisible visible. I also placed a yellow legal pad on the dining table with 2 columns, A and B. Under A, I wrote, no tests. Joint calendar used for real plans. Shared chores like grown-ups. Counseling scheduled. Under B, I wrote, separation plan, temporary housing, bills split, assets inventory, quiet, clean exit. Then I put a pin in the center like a referee dropping a puck. My phone buzzed around 6, a text from her, selfie in the studio mirror, captioned, stretching away the drama. I didn't reply. I'm not a meme. When she came back, she was bright and chatty and full of nothing that mattered. She asked if I wanted Thai. I said I'd already eaten. She asked if I saw the funny video she sent earlier. I said I'd been working. When she tried to turn it into a sparring match, why are you ignoring me? I didn't parry. I'm not, I said. I'm waiting on your decision. It's strange how quiet can feel louder than a shout. The house sounded different that night. Even the stairs had a different note under my feet. I slept in the guest room by choice, not as a punishment, but as a neutral space where nobody had home field advantage. I set my alarm for 7 a.m. because at 7:30 Thursday, I intended to hold myself to what I said. Wednesday, I kept simple. Work, gym, one last call to the therapist to confirm availability should I choose column A. I wrote the basics of a separation checklist in my notes: accounts to separate, subscriptions to cancel, the kind of practicalities that feel cold until you're grateful you wrote them down. I packed a small go bag and put it in the trunk: 2 changes of clothes, toiletries, a copy of the consultation appointment. Because I refuse to be the guy who threatens and then scrambles. She noticed the bag when we went to get groceries. What's that for? Contingency, I said. For what? Your dramatic exit? For keeping my word. She rolled her eyes so hard it looked like a stretch. You're not going anywhere. I'm not bluffing, I said. That's what bluffers say. Then call it, I said, and pushed the cart. Back home, she tried charm. She turned on the playlist we used to cook to and poured 2 glasses of wine and set the cutting board like the old rhythm could erase the new tempo. I washed my hands, dried them, and leaned against the counter. I'm not mad at you, I said. I'm not punishing you. I'm giving both of us a clear choice. If you pick A, I'll show up fully. If you pick B by default, I'll follow through fully. What I won't do is sit in the mush in between. Everything with you is binary, she said. A or B. Not everything, I said. Just this. She stared, then took a slow sip and set the glass down harder than necessary. You know what? Do what you need to do. I'm not rearranging my life because you got precious about keys and coffee. It's not about keys and coffee, I said. It's about respect and honesty. And it's about the fact that you told me you were testing me. I'm telling you I don't take tests I didn't sign up for. Then fail, she said, shrugging. See if I care. Thursday, 7:30, I said, and left the kitchen. I ended the night with a final act of clarity. I wrote a 1-sentence message in our shared notes app under the legal pad photo. Confirm column A or column B by Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Then I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and slept 8 hours straight for the first time that week. The odd thing about a deadline is how kind it feels when you've been floating. I was a man who said what he meant and set a clock to it. Morning would come, and with it, her answer, or her refusal to give one, which is still an answer. Either way, the test was over. The first 24 hours after the clock started, she went louder, not quieter. Day 1 looked like a highlight reel of her test, with a little extra glitter on top. The freezer grew a TV remote. The remote's batteries vanished. The laundry accidentally bled a red sock into my stack of white gym shirts, which I don't even love, but she stared at me like I was supposed to explode so she could call it proof. I bought new shirts on the way home and tossed the pink ones in a donation bag. You're not mad?" she asked, watching for a crack. "Not my color anyway," I said, and kept moving. You could feel the energy leak out of her just from that. That night she tried the calendar thing again, sent a new invite titled Quality Time, for real. She made popcorn, dimmed the lights, and queued up a rom-com we've both seen 3 times. Every 10 minutes, she glanced at me like I was the thermostat, and she was checking if the room had warmed up. I watched the movie and not her. When the credits rolled, she scooted closer and put her head on my shoulder as if she could smother a deadline under a blanket. "So, no more drama," she said. I told her it was never drama. It was a time box. She did the eye roll that says the conversation is boring now that consequences exist. Day 2 she swung to careless. Stayed out, with the girls, midnight then later. No check-ins. No reply to my text that simply read home by. At 12:43 a.m., the garage door whined open. I was in the guest room reading. She pushed the door with the back of her hand, like she wasn't sure which version of me would be on the other side. "Don't wait up," she said, already through the hallway. I didn't. I replied, and turned a page. When she brushed her teeth, she left the water running and watched me in the mirror like a detective hunting microreactions. I reached over and turned the faucet off. She laughed once, sharp and fast. "Control freak," she said. "Owner of the water bill," I said back. That ended it. In the morning, she tried sweet. French toast, sliced strawberries, powdered sugar tapped like snowfall. The plate slid toward me with a smile attached. "Peace offering," she said. I ate, thanked her, and put the plate in the dishwasher the right way. She hovered, waiting for me to pick up the pen and choose column, and because breakfast tasted like apology. I let the food be food and the timer be the timer. By the last evening, she got performative. She posted a photo of us from 2 summers ago, her in a sundress, me with a hand at her hip, blue sky doing its best to bless us. Caption: "Date night with this one soon?" 2 people liked it before she even set the phone down. I stared at the old versions of us and felt nothing that argued for delay. I've learned that soon, with a question mark, is a promise written in disappearing ink. At 7:26 a.m. Thursday, she brewed coffee and hummed. I sat at the dining table with the legal pad visible and the calendar event open on my laptop like a meeting about to start. At 7:29, she wandered over, glanced at the columns, and smirked. "Big day," she said. "Huge," I said. 7:30 hit. I closed the laptop and looked at her. "A or B?" She cocked her head like I'd asked about weather patterns in a different city. "Are we actually doing your little ceremony?" "Yep." "A. Full return. B. Complete separation." She took a sip, then said, "Pass. I'm not playing binary with you. Life's more nuanced than your flowchart." "Then it's B," I said. The smirk twitched, the first true micro-flinch. "Wait, what?" "You can call it nuance," I said, "but not choosing is choosing." She laughed, but it came out uneven. "So that's it. You wake up one day and decide our marriage is a checkbox?" 3 days ago," I said. "I gave you 72 hours because I respect clarity. Time's up." She tried indignation first. "You're throwing away 9 years over coffee and keys?" "I'm ending the part," I said, "where you tell me I'm in a test I never agreed to take." When indignation didn't move me, she reached for nostalgia. She said, "Taus," and "first house key," and "your dad's toast at the wedding." Like she could stack enough memories to build a bridge over the last week. I love those memories. I also love that I'm not required to live inside them, while the present version of us corrodes. I told her so gently. She stared at the legal pad, at the pen, at the column headers, at me. You're not serious, she said finally, voice low. I am, I said. Consultations tomorrow. You'll get papers after. The first tear didn't surprise me. The speed did. She moved from tears to fury like a weather front. You're cruel, she said. You wanted an excuse to leave. I've heard that line before, deployed when the person who set the fire realizes the alarms are connected to sprinklers. No, I said. I wanted us to stop pretending this was love when it's a stress test. 10 minutes later, there was bargaining. What if I call the therapist now? What if we reset for a week? What if we take a trip and forget this? I stayed with the only sentence that mattered. It was 3 days ago. She paced our kitchen like it had gotten smaller overnight. Maybe it had. Boundaries do that to rooms. By lunch, she tried seduction. You could feel the pivot in the way her voice softened when she asked if I wanted to start over in the bedroom. How her hand traced my shoulder like we were still returning to the old default. I didn't treat it like a solution. Intimacy isn't column A, I said. It's what column A people get to enjoy after they pick it. She scoffed like I'd failed a vibe check. You make everything homework. I shrugged. I make everything honest. In the afternoon, she called her sister, then her friend, then her mother, narrating a new version of us where I'd lost it and needed control and gave an ultimatum like we're in a movie. The sister texted me separately. Talk to her. She's spiraling. I replied with one line. I already did. Her mother called and got my voicemail. I sent her a short message back. We're handling it. When my lawyer's office emailed the intake questionnaire, I filled it out methodically. Assets, liabilities, no children, clean timeline. The paralegal replied with a polite, thank you for being thorough. I'm thorough because I don't want mess. A quiet, clean exit is the closest thing to kindness when respect is already gone. By evening, she tried one last play, community. She asked if we could talk with our neighbors who love us as a couple, as if witnesses would shock my resolve into shame. I told her no, that I wouldn't outsource our decision to people who are not inside our house at midnight when the faucet runs and the keys freeze. She said I was isolating. I said I was deciding. I printed the separation to-do and stuck it on the fridge under Taus again, this time like a map instead of a memory. I put a second copy in an envelope with her name, set it on the dining table, and walked her through the first 3 steps. Temporary housing at her sister's for 2 weeks, splitting recurring bills starting next cycle, inventorying shared items without theatrics. She wanted to argue over the couch. I told her I'd buy a new one, and she could keep this one if it mattered. The fight deflated before it inflated. It's hard to throw a plate when the other person offers to buy you 2 more. Before bed, she asked the last honest question of the day. Is there anything I can say that changes this? I said yes, and watched hope rise fast and risky. You could have picked A at 7:30, I said. Hope fell at the same speed. I slept in the guest room again, because it matched the truth. We were already in separate rooms of the same problem. When I woke, the house felt like it belonged to one person at a time. It would soon. The paperwork moved faster than either of us expected. My lawyer had everything in order within a week. She was served on a Tuesday. I didn't bother being home for the delivery. The first time she tried to call, I let it go to voicemail. By the second call, I'd blocked her. Friends started relaying messages. She just wants to talk. She's sorry you misunderstood. She thinks you're making a mistake. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to clarify. She missed the comfort of thinking I'd never actually enforce my boundaries. At mediation, she came in with that same smirk from the day I gave her the ultimatum. It only lasted about 15 seconds before she realized I wasn't going to flinch. You're throwing away 9 years over a joke, she said. It's not the joke, I told her. It's that I gave you a clear choice, and you chose to ignore it. That's not a marriage problem. That's a respect problem. She rolled her eyes, said something about me being too rigid. The mediator asked about splitting assets. I'd already moved my personal accounts out, locked down the retirement fund, and closed the credit cards. She got what was hers, nothing more. The rest of the session was transactional. She tried for one more dig on the way out. You'll regret this when you're alone. I didn't even look back. I'd rather be alone than disrespected. By the time the divorce was finalized, she'd stopped posturing. I think she expected I'd soften, maybe offer to try again. But she'd misread me from the start. The ultimatum wasn't a bluff. It was the moment I accepted the truth. The second someone treats your boundaries as optional, you've already lost the relationship. Weeks later, I ran into one of her friends at the grocery store. She didn't know what to say at first, then muttered, "She didn't think you'd actually go through with it." "That's why I had to," I said. And I meant it. I walked out of that store with my groceries, no anger or regret, just a quiet certainty. People talk about closure like it's something you wait to be given. I learned closure isn't given. It's taken, the moment you stop letting someone gamble with your self-respect. She tested my patience, and she found its limit. That's the last test I'll ever let anyone run on me.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.